بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم، فإن أمارتي بالسوء ما اتعظت، فإن أمارتي بالسوء ما اتعظت من جهلها بنذير الشيب والهرم، من جهلها بنذير الشيب والهرم. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. ولا أعدت من الفعل الجميل قرا، ولا أعدت من الفعل الجميل قرا، ضيف ألم برأسي غير محتشم، ضيف ألم برأسي غير محتشم. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. لو كنت أعلم أني ما أوقره، لو كنت أعلم أني ما أوقره، كتمت سرا بدا لي منه بالكتم، كتمت سرا بدا لي منه بالكتم. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. من لي برد جماح من غوايتها، من لي برد جماح من غوايتها، كما يرد جماح الخير بالنجوم، كما يرد جماح الخير بالنجوم. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. فلا ترم بالمعاصي كثرة شهوتها، فلا ترم بالمعاصي كثر شهوتها. إن الطعام يقوي شهوة النائم، إن الطعام يقوي شهوة النائم. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. والنفس كالطفل إن تهمله شب على والنفس كالطفل إن تهمله شب على حب الرضاع وإن تفطمه ينفطمي حب الرضاع وإن تفطمه ينفطمي مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم فاصرف هواها وحاذر أن توليه فاصرف هواها وحاذر أن توليه إن الهوى ما تولى يسمع أو يسمي إن الهوى ما تولى يسمع أو يسمي مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم.
He complains about his nafs and his desires. He needs to prepare for death. He needs to prepare for life after death, meeting with Almighty Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. But the nafs has become rebellious like a rebel horse. He paints a picture of a person that is absolutely helpless. He is desperate for help and assistance, and then he paints a picture of finally getting a spiritual guide. Finding a sheikh, a person that can help him to fight his nafs and his desires, and then the spiritual guide that gives him the basic principles of Islah and Reformation. Three things he refers to control the nafs and the desires. The first, ijtinab anil ma'asi, staying away from guna and sins. The second, to monitor the movement of the nafs. Do not leave the nafs free to do whatever the one nafs wish to do. And the third, to have a moderate approach in everything. And then he concludes this chapter with giving three advices in preparation for death. First, istighfar, seeking forgiveness from Almighty Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. The second, istiqamat, to be steadfast on deen, Islam and our ibadat. And the third is to make mujahada, to exert yourself in making the ibadat of Almighty Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. I will now translate these 14 poems, brief explanation, and thereafter the lesson that we get out of it. فَإِنَّ أَمَّارَتِي بِالسُّوءِ مَتَّعَزَتْ مِنْ جَهْلِهَا بِنَذِيرِ الشَّيْبِ وَالْهَرَمِ. Verily, my nafs ammara, the nafs that persuades me with evil, did not heed advice with the warning of the grey hair on my head and old age. My nafs ammara did not heed advice due to its ignorance. In these two couplets, in these two poems, Allama Busairi, he complains of old age, and he now faces reality that the hair on the head has become white, the hair on the beard has become white. What am I now going to do when I'm about to meet Almighty Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala? وَلَا أَعَدْتُ مِنَ الْفِعْلِ الْجَمِيلِ قِرَاء زَيْفٍ أَلَمَّ بِرَأْسِي غَيْرَ مُحْتَشَمِ. Alamma refers to something coming upon yourself, and muhtashami refers to something that comes very, very easily. The translation is, And I did not prepare a hospitality of good deeds. I did not prepare a hospitality of good deeds for the guest. The guest refers to the grey hair that's on the head that has easily lodged on my head. The hair that comes on our head, the white hair, we didn't invite it. It came all by itself. It became a guest all by itself. So in these couplets, Allama Busairi now complains that he hasn't prepared for death. لو كنت أعلم أني ما أوقره كتمت سرا بدالي منه بالكتم. Katami is a type of a dye that is used to dye the hair. So he says, had I known that I would not be able to honor the grey hair on the head. The grey hair on the head, that is a guest from the side of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala that requires to be honored. So had I known that I would not be able to honor the grey hair on my head, then I would have concealed my grey hair by dyeing it. مَنْ لِي بِرَدِّ جِمَاحٍ مِّنْ هَوَايَتِهَا كَمَا يُرَدُّ جِمَاحُ الْخَيْلِ بِاللُّجُمِ. Jimah with a ha, it refers to a wild horse. A horse that has become very, very rebellious. And lujum in the second poem, it refers to the reins of the horse. So Allama Busairi says, who is there that can restrain my rebellious nafs from its rebellion? Nafs has become very, very rebellious. Just as a rebellious horse that is restrained by its reins. In these couplets, Allama Busairi likens the rebellion of the nafs like a rebel horse. Very, very stubborn, not coming under control. فَلَا تَرُمْ بِالْمَعَاصِي كَسْرَ شَهْوَتِهَا إِنَّ الطَّعَامِ يُقَوِّي شَهْوَةَ النَّهِيمِ. Through sinning of sins, it only increases the more you want. Solution is not stay away. Child feeding it, the child will become a youth enjoying breastfeeding. This is an embarrassment. This is a defect. If you wean it from breastfeeding, then only the child will stop breastfeeding. فَاصْرِفْ هَوَاهَا وَحَاذِرْ أَن تُوَلِّيَهُ إِنَّ الْهَوَى مَا تَوَلَّى يُسِمْ أَوْ يَسِمْ. تُوَلِّيَهُ for Babe Tafa'ul means to dominate. And the second couplet, there are two words that are very similar to one another. One is from Sulasi Mujarrad, one is from Sulasi Mazid Fi. Yusim from Babe If'al, Sulasi Mazid Fi, and Yasim Sulasi Mujarrad from Babe Daraba Yadribu. The meaning of it is, so turn the desires of the nafs and beware that the nafs does not overpower you. Verily, lust, carnal desires, when it overpowers, it will either kill you or either it will create a defect in you. In all these couplets and all these poems, it's very clear that Allama Busairi rahmatullahi alayhi is talking about the nafs and is talking about the evils of the nafs. Every one of us, we have two enemies within us. One is the shaitan and the other is the nafs. Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala tells us in the Quran Al-Kareem, إِنَّ الشَّيْطَانِ لِلْإِنسَانِ عَدُوٌّ مُبِينٌ. The shaitan, the clear, open enemy of mankind. And the other enemy, Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam reported to mention, the hadith is in Bayhaqi Sharif. أَعْدَى عَدُوِّكَ الَّتِي مَا بَيْنَ جَنْبَيْكَ. The worst enemy, the greatest enemy that is within our own self. It is the nafs itself. When a theft takes place in the house, and then we have to investigate the cause of the theft, who's the thief that came and ransacked the house. We investigated, then we found that there are two thieves. One is inside and one is outside. To deal with the thief that is outside is relatively easier than dealing with the thief that is inside. And it's very often the thief that comes from outside is because of the thief that is inside. Inside job, as we call it. Somebody tells somebody something outside, and then the person comes and attacks. So there is collaboration between the thief inside and the thief that is outside. The thief that is inside is our nafs, and the thief that is outside is the shaitan. It is the nafs that collaborates with the shaitan and aggravates our passion and our desires. After all, who misled shaitan? Not another shaitan. It was the nafs of the shaitan that misled the shaitan. Therefore, the worst enemy is not the shaitan. The worst enemy is the nafs that is within our own selves. We are living in this world of passion and desire. Allah Ta'ala tells us in the Quran Al-Kareem, زُيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ حُبُّ الشَّهَوَاتِ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ وَالْبَنِينَ وَالْقَنَاطِيرِ الْمُقَنطَرَةِ مِنَ الذَّهَبِ وَالْفِضَّةِ وَالْخَيْلِ الْمُسَوَّمَةِ وَالْأَنْعَامِ وَالْحَرْثِ. Three things Almighty Allah Ta'ala speaks about, that He designed it for us and He created an inclination of these three things to us, to our nafs. The first, an-nisa, woman. Every man by human nature, he is attracted to the form, shape and color of woman. And if he doesn't control his nafs, then it turns out to be a sickness. He looks at one woman, she's so good, she's so beautiful, he's attached to her. And then he would see somebody even better, he will leave the first one, he will go for the second one. And then every woman's beauty supersedes another woman's beauty, and then this is a sickness that never ever comes to an end. The second, Allah refers to al-banin, our children. Almighty Allah Ta'ala beautified them to us, and they could become a means of fitna. وَالْقَنَاطِيرِ الْمُقَنطَرَةِ, wealth that it accumulated. And in wealth that it accumulated, Allah Ta'ala refers to five things. ذهب, فضة, خيل المسومة, والأنعام والحرث. Five things from the wealth. Gold, silver, branded horses. And in today's times, to make it relevant to our times, we have our flying cars. The BMWs, the X6s, the Mercedes, the Porsche, they are equivalent to خيل المسومة. والأنعام, animals. And to make it relevant to our times, while animals are a great form of income and wealth, but the big factories that we may have, wal-harth, and our gardens, and to make it relevant to our times, our different investment schemes. So Allah Ta'ala speaks about making all these things very, very attractive to us. So on one side, we have an attraction to all that, but on the other side, Allah Ta'ala tells us there is a limit. And because of the attraction and the limit, from within ourselves, people of Iman, we have an internal war that is taking place within ourselves. On one side, we have Iman in us, and on the other side, we have the nafs and shaitan. These are the two enemies that are fighting within us. And that is why people of Iman, we always feel restless. Restless because our Iman is always fighting the nafs and shaitan. Two armies inside. Powerful, huge, gigantic armies. Iman, powerful army. Representative of Allah Ta'ala. And the nafs and the shaitan, they have ganged up against this Iman. Now because Iman is so powerful, that Iman is alone for those both of them. And the war field, what they're fighting for. Iman, what is Iman fighting for? And what is nafs and shaitan collectively fighting for? The war field is the heart of a human being. Iman wants to dominate and conquer. And nafs and shaitan collectively formed an alliance, they also want to conquer. And Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has so beautifully mentioned it. Nowadays, We are more worried about the wars that are taking place in the outside world. Who won the war? Who is defeated? The reality is that we forget the war that is taking place within ourselves and we concentrate on every other war in the outside world. And the reality is that we as Muslims, we are being defeated in the outside world is because we have, our nafs has defeated us inside. And because we are defeated inside, outside we're also going to be defeated. And until and unless we don't conquer our nafs, we'll never see victory in the outside world. And this is understood from a hadith that is in Tabarani, where Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam is reported to have mentioned, Afzalul jihad, ay yujahidu nafsah. The greatest jihad, most virtuous jihad, is that a person fights with his nafs. In one hadith, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam has mentioned, the hadith is in Kanzul Ummal, Afzalul jihad, ay yujahidu rajulu nafsahu. The most virtuous jihad, not the jihad in the outside world, the most virtuous jihad, and the jihad, the enemy that we really need to conquer, is that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned, that the person makes jihad with his own nafs. A human being is made of 4 components. Sand. We are created from sand. We are created from clay. From mud. We are created with water. There is also a component or element of water in us. Some fire is also in us. And air, or rather wind, that is in us. These are the 4 components that are in us. And each one of these 4 components, in different parts of life, they exemplify themselves in different ways. They show themselves up in different ways. When a person gets angry, that is an expression of the fire that is within him. When a person is generous, it is an expression of that water that is in him. First, a person feels proud, arrogant, high up in the air, it is an expression of the air that is in himself. And then when a person is humble, humility comes in him, it's an expression of the sand that is in himself. Now each one of these 4 components, they are natural, they are created within us. And they are natural instincts of the human being. But we need to create a moderation in them. I'tadal in them. One alim, he very beautifully explains. Now each one of these components, if a person has anger, but excessive anger, is out of mark of moderation. Is harmful and detrimental for himself. If a person is over generous, he's generous in places where he's not supposed to be generous. He's past the mark of moderation, that is harmful and detrimental to himself. Or, if a person shows pride and arrogance in places where Shariat has prohibited him, so that is also a fault, that's a defect in him. Or if a person expresses humbleness and humility in a place where you're not supposed to show humbleness and humility, that is also a defect in him. Each one of these 4 components is important. Yes, at times, Sharia tells you that you need to get angry. If there's violation of Sharia, then you can't express humbleness and humility. At times, Sharia even tells us that we must show our pride. When a person is making tawaf of the Kaaba Sharif, and he just puts on the ihram, and the first 3 rounds he has to make istiba, he has to keep the shoulder open and walk like a warrior, as though he's showing pride to the enemies. So that is ramal, that is a pride, where Shariat also tells you that you must show pride. And we as Muslims, we display pride with our iman. We are proud of our iman. So there are places where you have to be humble, there are places where you're not supposed to be humble. There are places where you're supposed to get angry, not supposed to get angry. And in order to create this moderation, that is where the islah of the nafs has to come in. Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, he made dua to Almighty Allah tabarak wa ta'ala. He said, "Oh Allah, anna yuhyi hadil mawta." Allah, people die, and I believe in the concept of life after death, but once a person dies, the body disintegrates, it becomes sand. So how are you going to bring back to life all these people? So Allah tabarak wa ta'ala told Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, "Awalam tu'min?" You don't believe? Now Allah knew that Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam believed. But for people that would hear this incident, it is to educate us and teach us that at times you need to see certain things to get more itminan. So Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam said that, yes Allah, I believe. وَلَكِنْ لِيَطْمَئِنَّ قَلْبِي. I want to see an example of life after death. So that I have itminan qalb. Sorry, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala told him, خُذْ أَرْبَعَةً مِنَ الطَّيْرِ. Take 4 birds. Slaughter them and put them in different mountains, different limbs in different parts, and call for them, and they will all assemble on themselves and they will come over to you. Ulama of Tasawwuf, they have mentioned that the 4 birds that Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam slaughtered, one was an ostrich, the other was a fowl, the third was an owl, and the 4th was a pigeon. And ulama of Tasawwuf explain that these 4, each one of them, you relate it to the nafs of the human being, it is very, very relevant. Ostrich is known for its beauty. And he likes to show off his beauty. Sometimes when the ostrich gets in his mood, you see how it flares up its wings and it shows off its beauty. Second, fowl, it is known for its desires. Feeding its desires all the time. Look at a fowl all the time it's pecking onto the ground. Third, an owl, you see it wherever it flies, it's flying around all over as though it's searching for something. It has a lot of greed in it. And the 4th, it is a pigeon. You look at a pigeon, it knows that somebody may just catch it, but it will come and sit right there. It has ghaflat in it. It has unmindfulness in it. So these are the 4 things ulama of Tasawwuf mentioned that Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam was told to slaughter all this. But when we make it relevant to ourselves, that these are the 4 things that sometimes cause destruction and disaster to our nafs. Greed, when it comes into us, then it is very, very dangerous. Beauty, when there's no control of beauty, there's no discipline of that beauty, it can be also very harmful and detrimental to us. Likewise, when there's ghaflat that comes into us, heedlessness, then it takes us away from Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. And our desires, when they're also not controlled, then it's also going to be harmful and detrimental. So all these 4 things, they also need to be slaughtered. And then only the nafs will come under control. Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhuma, he says, wherever in the Quran Kareem, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala speaks about hawa. Hawa refers to that following our carnal desires. There's not a single place in the Quran Kareem where Allah speaks about hawa, lust, carnal desires, but Allah has not condemned it. Every way in the Quran where Allah speaks about hawa, either Allah condemns it, or either when Allah speaks in the context of a person, going against his hawa, that the person will earn Jannat and paradise. For example, Allah says in the Quran Kareem, وَلَا تَتَّبِئِ الْهَوَىٰ فَيُدِلَّكَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. Don't follow your hawa. Don't follow your nafs and your desires. You'll be deviated from the path of Allah. In another verse of the Quran Kareem, Allah says, if haqq, لَوِ اتَّبَعَ الْحَقُّ أَهْوَاءَهُمْ لَفَسَدَتِ السَّمَاوَاتُ وَالْأَرْضِ. If haqq, Allah or wahi or revelation or the Nabi of Allah, if that all have to follow the hawa, the desires of people, the desires of the kuffar, then there will be widespread corruption on the sky and the earth. And there's a very thought-provoking, rather a frightening incident that Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala refers to in the Quran Kareem. وَاتَّبَعَ هَوَىٰ فَمَثَلُهُ كَمَثَلِ الْكَلْبِ. Allah speaks about a person who was known to be a mustajabud da'wat at the time of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. His name was Bal'am ibn Ba'ura, great alim of his time. He knew the Ismul A'azam. A person who knows the Ismul A'azam, the specific name of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala through which you make dua, immediate alim of his time. But the enemy of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam went to him and he gave him. And he went to curse Musa alayhi salam. Allah made it such that instead of cursing Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, his tongue twisted and he cursed the people that requested. Then the punishment came to him because of following his nafs and desires. فَمَثَلُهُ كَمَثَلِ الْكَلْبِ. His example is the example of a dog. In tahmil alayhi yalhas or tatruku yalhas. A dog, see how it pants away. That was exactly that happened to Bal'am ibn Ba'ura. You follow our nafs and desires, and that is what happens to us. It's life of grief, life of difficulty, uneasiness comes into a person. That is why Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam reported to have mentioned that Salasum Muhlikat. There are three things, they are destructive, harmful to a human being. And three things Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam referred to, Shuhum Muta'. Shuh refers to greed, where you follow your greed all the time. Second, Hawa Muttaba'. Your hawa, your lust, your desires, where you follow it. And third, you feel good about yourself. Anything that you do, there's ijab. It's very close to be a person feeling proud about himself and feeling good about himself, attributing everything only towards his own self. So these are the three things that are very, very harmful and very, very detrimental to a person. Brothers, as we go on in life, in the journey of life, we come to a point of realization that we have to change. Especially with people of Iman, we know that there's no chance in the Akhirat if you're going to go with our nafs. We have to fight it. There's no alternative. Allah Ta'ala speaks about three phases in the Quran Kareem, three phases of life. Allahu alladhi khalaqakum min da'f. Summa ja'ala min ba'd. Allahu alladhi khalaqakum min da'fin. Summa ja'ala min ba'dihi. ثُمَّ جَعَلَ مِنْ بَعْدِ قُوَّةٍ ضُعْفًا وَشَيْبًا. Three phases of our life Allah speaks about. First, we were weak in our childhood, in our youth. Then after Allah Ta'ala created us as young men, very strong, old age sets in. Three phases of life. So just as there's these three phases of life, Allah speaks about the three nafs in the Quran Kareem. Nafs ammara, nafs lawwaba, nafs mutma'inna. Nafs ammara, by human nature, our nafs wants to be fed. Go behind women. Go behind wealth. Swallow other people's wealth. Swear the person. All different evils. That's what the nafs tells us to do. But then, when our islah is made, or when we tread the path of islah, when we try to get closer to Allah, we hear the talks of the ulama, we come to a masjid, and the realization of death has dawned upon us. We know that we have to now change. The nafs starts reproaching us. Nafs al-lawwama. Keep on working on the nafs. Keep on knocking the nafs down. Knocking the nafs down. Now, a time will come in your life where you'll go against your nafs and you're going to get sukoon and peace in your life. And this is what Allah says, Ya ayyuhan nafsul mutma'innah. Irji'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiyah. Now because you went against your nafs, you please Allah tabarak wa ta'ala. When you return to Allah, Allah will tell you, Udkhuli fi ibadi wadkhuli jannati. You enter from among my pious servants and you enter into my Jannat and paradise. Make dua, Allah make us among those people who go against our nafs and desires, and we at the moment, there's no doubt all of us, we've got nafs al-lawwama. But make dua, Allah brings nafs mutma'inna in us. And that is why there's a dua of Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. When Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam taught us this dua, Allahumma inni as'aluka nafsam bika mutma'inna. Allah, you give us such a nafs that we have itminan. That means it's this dua always teaching us that don't stay where you are. Go further, take one step further from nafs al-lawwama and try to reach nafs mutma'inna. That is why it's very important that we need to work on reforming ourselves. Reforming ourselves. There was one person, and I mentioned it quite a few times. One person went to one university and he studied the science of Reformation. So he learned all the theories, all the rules, the principles of Reformation, and he prepared a blueprint. That how he's going to transform the entire world. Prepared a blueprint, and now when the time came to implement it, he realized such a huge mammoth task. How am I going to reform the entire world? Everything was in theory, but often a practical thing may not be in line with theory. Sometimes you just have to change things according to what is most practical. Then he thought, if I can't change the entire world, let me change my country. He prepared a blueprint for that. Again, he went to implement it. He thought this is even more difficult. Then he thought, let me change the people of my town, the people of my city. For that he prepared a blueprint. Rules and regulation. He knows his town, he knows his city, he knows his people. He prepared a blueprint. And he went out trying to reform the people. Nobody wanted to listen to him. He said, rather let me go reform my own family. For that, he prepared some rules and principles, and he started off with his wife. The first knock he got from her. Started with his children. They also knocked him off. And he thought to himself, where I can reform the world, where I can reform my country, where I can reform my town and city. My family also don't want to listen to me. I learned all the rules and principles and science of reformation. Rather let me reform my own self. And we started working on his own self. After that, he started talking to his wife and his children. They started listening. He started talking to the people of his town and his community. They started listening. And then his message reached the four corners of the world. We have to start off with our nafs first. First, our own reformation. And that is why one person came and told one pious person, so and so person is talking bad about you. He's an enemy. He's talking bad about you. So the pious person responded, let me sort the other one out. Then another person came and told him, that so and so person is talking bad about you. He said, let me sort the other one out. So many people came and told him. And for everyone, he sort the other one out, sort the other one out. Somebody came and asked him, who's the other one you're talking about? How many enemies you've got? You have to sort the other one out. He said, that other enemy is my nafs. Let me sort that one out. I sort that one out, then inshallah everything else will come in place. So, we have to first go for our nafs. We have to control our nafs, control our desires. And for that, we have to have himmat and courage. Nothing in this world happens without himmat and courage. Child, crawling, and then you train to start walking. Even the child has to have a little bit himmat and courage for walking. When a child from crawling needs to walk, that needs courage. Then don't we need courage to change our nafs and desires? We think that this is the automatic procedure. It's never going to happen. We think that it's just going to come and listen to a Friday bayan and automatically your nafs going to be changed. It's never going to happen. It's a manual issue. It is something that we have to take it upon our own self. Somebody wants to earn an income. You're going to stay in your house. You're not going to come out and have the courage to go earn an income. Don't expect your bank balance to increase. If you think that if somebody wants to get married, it is just wishful thinking, you don't get the courage and get into a marriage, you'll never be a married person. Or if somebody is in a marriage, they've got a marital problem, you're not going to have the courage to address the problem, you're going to carry on with the problem. So for everything that you want, you have to have himmat, you have to have courage. And in the beginning, you require more courage. After everything falls in place. An example, here in an aeroplane, when it takes off, it has 4 engines on. And the fuel consumption is higher. The aeroplane, when it takes off, and on the runaway, then all 4 engines are on. Fuel consumption is also higher, because from the ground, it has to go up into the air. And then after the aeroplane is airborne, 2 engines switch off, the fuel consumption also gets lower. Likewise, we also in the field of Islah and Suluk, when we are taking off, we need more engines on, and we also need more fuel consumption. And then after that, everything will fall in place. This is the example that's given also by Hazrat Maulana Ashwari Thanvi rahmatullahi, that in everything for Islah, the first thing, fundamental thing is courage. We need to say to our own self that I need to change myself. I need to have that courage. Then only you'll go you'll go further. And everything requires service. Look at a car. It requires servicing. You drive it, can be a brand new car. You may have a service plan, right, of at least 3 service plans, but the car over a period of time, it runs. It also requires oil change. It requires the filter to be changed. Different things of the car for the car to move properly. So our nafs is also moving. We interact with so many things and we expect the car, our nafs not to be serviced. When the car has to be serviced, you think our nafs doesn't need to be serviced. A ship made of steel, taking tons of good from one part of the world to another part of the world. When it comes back, it has to be painted again. Otherwise, with a small hole, it probably water will start going in there. Likewise, our nafs also needs to be painted. Our nafs also needs to be treated. One place, I gave a talk, I was giving this example. I gave the example of an aeroplane. I gave the example of a ship. I gave an example of the car. One person came to me after the bayan, he told me, Mufti, do you own a transport company? He gave so many examples, give example of an aeroplane, and give an example of a ship, and give example, and give an example of train and other things as well. They ask me, we have, you owner of a transport company, that you know it so well, you speak about all these things. So respected elder and friends, that it is very, very important for us that we always make dua to Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. And there's one dua that we should make, that Allahumma slih sha'ni kullah. Allah, you make my islah completely. وَلَا تَكِلْنِي إِلَى نَفْسِي طَرَفَةَ عَيْنٍ. Never leave me for a twinkle of an eye to my nafs. In takilni ila nafsi. Allah, if you hand me over to my nafs, takilni ila za'f wa zambin wa awra wa khati'ah. Then you'll be handing me over to something that's very weak. I can't trust myself. If you hand me over to myself, I'm so weak. How am I going to control? Wa zambin, you're going to hand me over to gunas. Wa khati'ah, of sins. So Allah, you take control of my nafs and don't hand me over to my own nafs. So we make dua that Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala give us the tawfiq and hidayat, that we change ourselves, fight our nafs and desires, and we can never get close to Almighty Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala whilst we keep on feeding our nafs and keep on feeding our desires. At the same time, I just thought that here Allama Busayri rahmatullahi, he refers to white hair. So I just want to mention some points on the white hair. The white hair is also very effective in helping us to make our islah. The white hair is actually a guest of Almighty Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. Our hair was black and then it became white. So don't just look at it as white hair. It's actually a guest from the side of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. Very, very respectable and a very, very honorable guest. The first person that comes in the hadith, Kana Ibrahim awwalu man ra'a sheeb. First person to see white hair was Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. Imagine, first human being to see white hair, Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. He's all human beings having black, and where this white hair came up from? So he asked Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala that, Ya Rabb, ma hadha? Allah, what is this white hair? How this white hair came? All human beings got black hair, where this white hair came? So Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala told him that, hadha waqar. This is waqar, this is dignity, this is honor from my side. Then Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam made dua, Rabbi zidni waqara. Allah, you increase my waqar, increase my dignity with that white hair. And it is, as it is said, that the white hair that the old person gets is not just white hair. It's the stripes that you've earned in life. So sometimes young people take old people for granted. But never think that your wisdom is greater than the wisdom of an elderly person. The elderly person, white hair, that the experiences that he has earned and all the stripes that he has earned in life. In one hadith, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is reported to have mentioned, Man shaba shaybatan fil Islam, kanat lahu nuran yawm al-qiyamah. That person who became old, white hair, he got that white hair will be a nur for him on the day of Qiyamah. And in one hadith, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is reported to have mentioned, Inna min ijlalillah ikramu shaybatil muslim. That it is from the ijlal of Allah, from the greatness and honor of Allah, that you honor a person with white hair. And in one hadith, in the hadith al-Qudsi, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says that Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala says that inni la astahyi min abdi wa amati yashibani fil Islam u'adhibuhuma fil nar ba'da zalik. Allah says, I feel ashamed, I feel shy that my male slave and my female slave, man, woman, they got white hair, they passed away in that condition, and then I must punish them in spite of that. I feel ashamed to even punish them. Umar radiallahu ta'ala, he used to appoint one person frequently now and then to come and remind him of death. When Umar radiallahu ta'ala's hair got white, he told a person, I don't need your appointment anymore. The person asked why? He said that somebody is already appointed, my white hair is there to remind me of death. From the mas'ala point of view, if a person has white hair, then it is permissible for a person to even dye the hair. Because Allama Busayri rahmatullahi says katamtu sirram badali minhu bil katami, that he speaks about dyeing the hair. And in fact, in one hadith, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that innal yahud wal nasara la yusbihun. Yahud and Nasara, they don't dye their hair. So you people, fakhalifuhum, people, you should dye your hair. In fact, during the conquest of Makkah Mukarramah, Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu's father, Ibn Abi Quhafa, he came, his hair was white. So Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told, go dye your hair. Dye your hair. Now from the masla point of view, that if somebody got white hair and he wishes to dye it any other color besides black, pure black is not permissible. Any other color besides pure black, it is permissible. And is it advisable to dye? It all depends on the environment that you live in, and it also depends on whether that sometimes white hair, if somebody has white hair, but it looks unpresentable. And if it's dyeing it makes a person look more presentable, especially the married person, white hair, and the wife doesn't like the sight of how he looks, then if the wife encourages him or wife requests him, dye your hair, I don't like how you look, then in that case, it becomes almost wajib for the husband to dye the hair, because just as he would like to see his wife in a presentable situation, the wife would also like to see him in a presentable situation. Allah give us tawfiq wa akhir da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.